Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is Monday, December the 11th, 2017, day 278. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, there's quite a few new subscribers I've picked up in the past few months, so I wanted to bring all those new people up to speed a little bit before I get started on today's TowerGate news. And so I figure I just want to kind of tell you what TowerGate's all about, why I call this TowerGate, and kind of where this is all going, how it all got started, just to bring you up to speed. So anyway, what happened was about 278 videos ago, I was sitting here on a Saturday morning and I heard the news that Trump had tweeted out that he had just found out that Obama was wiretapping him. And it kind of, I thought about that for like 2 days. And so by Monday, I decided that I was going to follow this very closely because after a couple days of thinking about it, it reminded me so much of Watergate and the break-in that happened at the Democratic National Committee, and how that break-in, which was at the time just a local metro story that didn't mean anything, turned into something that brought down a president and many other people. So anyway, it was a major event in my life. I was like 10 years old or so at the time, and I was captivated by Watergate, and I watched the hearings and followed it through the whole thing. Remember, the entire Watergate fiasco from the time of the break-in to the time that Nixon resigned was 2 years and 4 months. That's a long time for something like that to take to unwind. And but I watched it very, very closely, and so it had a major impact on me. And of course, I watched all the movies and read all the books and studied it. It was a major event. You know, we had a president resign. It inadvertently led to the vice president having to resign. You had 2 attorneys general went to jail. You had the top 5 people around Nixon, chief of staff and what they called the Nixon 5, all went to prison. You had 22 other people, including everyone except really in the top tier of Nixon's administration, with the exception of his personal lawyer, John Dean, because John Dean turned rat and ratted out the rest of them. That's what pretty much one of the several things that brought down the Nixon and all his men, all the president's men, I guess you would say. So anyway, this was a major event in my life as a kid, and because this, you know, having a president have to resign, you know, and when you're 10 or 11 years old or whatever, it's just something, I was captivated by it. So anyhow, the morning that Trump tweeted this out, you know, the morning he tweeted it out, I just thought about it for a couple days, and I thought, okay, I'm going to follow this story because something in my gut tells me there's a lot more going on here. That, you know, that if Trump says he's being, you know, wiretapped, you know, I was asking myself the questions. Well, who would wiretap him? You're talking about some intelligence agency, and why would an intelligence agency be wiretapping a, you know, presidential candidate or president-elect? So I thought there was a lot more going on to this, so I thought, well, I'm going to keep track of this story. And my first idea was just to get like a spiral notebook and write stuff down and keep track of it like a diary. And then I thought, no, I think I'm just going to do like videos. Every day, follow the story and do a video diary. And I'll call it TowerGate because it was thought at the time that the wiretapping took place in Trump Tower. So that's how I got TowerGate. Okay? So that's how that all came together. Now, as I mentioned, during Watergate, there were multiple flashpoints. There were large flashpoints and small flashpoints. And we see the same thing happening, and you always see this type of thing happening when you have these types of events that play themselves out. It takes a long time for these things to play themselves out. So I knew that going in, that this was not going to be, you know, a month or 2 or 6 month story. This was going to be a 2 to 3 year process of unwinding exactly what's going on with this story, and that's why I follow it on a daily basis. So, like I said, the flashpoints back during the Watergate thing, of course, the first flashpoint was the break-in at the Watergate Hotel at the Democratic National Committee, where Nixon, actually Haldeman, but Nixon probably knew about it, maybe not the specifics of the operation, but Haldeman had approved increasing this type of activity with these individuals that worked for the campaign to re-elect Nixon. these guys they called the plumbers to go out and do things. So one of the things they wanted to do was to get into the Democratic National Committee headquarters and place bugs. They also wanted to get into the file cabinet of one of the secretaries there, because it was believed that she had the list of names of individuals with whom this secretary would arrange prostitution. There was a madam who supplied prostitutes to the DNC, and this was known. What they wanted was the client list, those people who had been entertained with prostitutes. They wanted that list to use it against them in the campaign. And of course they wanted to bug the DNC. So the burglars get caught in the process. That was the very first flashpoint. And that occurred, in the summer of 72. So anyway, then the next thing that really happens that was a big flashpoint in Watergate was when they discovered, Woodward and Bernstein discovered the secret slush fund. The secret slush fund was this fund that they had where they were just taking tens of thousands dollars a day in cash money. Not that taking in the money was so illegal, but it was what they were doing with the money, because it was this money that was funding these operations against the Democrats and against Hubert Humphrey, against Hubert Humphrey, and they broke into what's his name, the guy who linked the Pentagon Papers. They broke into his doctor's office to get files about his psychological sessions with his shrink. Ellsberg, they broke into Ellsberg's doctor's office to get records on Ellsberg. He was a shrink. So anyway, they were doing all these things. So that was a major flashpoint, is when Woodward and Bernstein discovered the slush fund, which was providing the money, which eventually proved to be the money that paid the burglaries. And of course, they also found the 5 individuals who controlled the slush fund, and that put them inside the White House and really connected the crime to the Nixon administration. That was a major flashpoint. The next flashpoint came when the judge ruled, the next thing happened was Alexander Butterfield, while testifying in hearings, told the Congress and everyone listening in the world that Nixon had a secret taping system in his office. So once they learned that Nixon had a secret taping system, the next thing was, hey, well, we need to hear those tapes, which led into a major legal battle that went all the way to the Supreme Court. So Butterfield's stating during his testimony during Congress that there was a taping system in the White House was definitely a major flashpoint in Watergate. Then we had the judge ruling that Nixon had to turn over the tapes. He lost that argument in the courts. That was a big flashpoint. Then Nixon decides that he will fire the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox, which was a major event called the Midnight Massacre. And that was a major flashpoint, because what Nixon did was he told the Attorney General, he said, I want you to fire the special prosecutor. And he said, I can't do that. He said, I will have to resign. And Nixon said, okay, fine, resign. Nixon went to the number 2 man and said, okay, I now want you to fire the special prosecutor, Archibald Cox. He said, I can't do that. He said, I would have to resign. So Nixon said, go ahead, resign. So he resigned. So Nixon goes to the 3rd guy, Robert Bork. And he says, okay, Robert Bork, I need you to fire the special prosecutor. And Bork kind of thinks about it. And he says, okay, well, you are the president, you are the executive, you can order me to fire the special prosecutor, but if I do it, I would have to resign after doing it. So Bork fired Archibald Cox, and then he resigned. So that's how that all went down, and that was called the Midnight Massacre. So that was a major flashpoint. Then, of course, then the tapes were heard, and once Republican members of Congress heard what was on those tapes, even though there was some missing tapes, some tape erased, once the Republicans heard what was on those tapes, they, of course, went into Nixon and said, you better resign. You better resign. So that was pretty much the end for Nixon. This whole thing took 2 years and 4 months to play itself out. So I expect the same in the thing that we're following now, which is, of course, started out as just as Trump suggesting he was being wiretapped, and we found out, of course, we had the dossier, the campaign to try to destroy his candidacy and then his presidency, and that's evolved into a full-stage deep state coup, which we're now learning was engineered at the very top of the Obama administration, involved all the agencies of the federal government, and is larger and bigger than anything Watergate or Nixon could ever have dreamed of. So that's why we're following the story. Now, there are flashpoints in this story as well. Of course, some of the major flashpoints in TowerGate story that we're covering is, of course, we learned of this dossier. That really opened up a whole new chapter and got us to go down a completely different path away from just the surveillance and the unmasking. The dossier came along, and that began the Russia investigations, or led to it. That may be what's behind the surveillance. So the discovery of the dossier was a major flashpoint. Then, of course, we learn that Christopher Steele, a former MI6 agent, and Fusion GPS were behind the dossier. That was a major flashpoint because that opens up many more avenues, many more doors that you have to open and walk in and see what's going on there. Then, of course, we learn another flashpoint is when we learn that the Rotten Reverend Clinton was the Democratic donor that paid for the dossier. That is another major flashpoint. We learn that Peter Strokanus is the key operative involved in the email investigation and the Trump investigation, and that he is pro-Hillary and anti-Trump, and he was let go and no one was told. This has become another flashpoint, which has taken us now closer inside the actual FBI. And of course, then we learned about Gary Orr, or Bruce Orr, or whatever his name is, who worked directly under Sally Yates, which was the Deputy Attorney General at the time that this went down. We learned that he met with Glenn Simpson and Christopher Steele, and that was another flashpoint because now this puts us in the Department of Justice. So now we have an individual inside the FBI at the high level involved in both the email investigation and the Trump collusion, Trump-Russia collusion thing, and then we get a guy high up in the Justice Department who's got these meetings with GPS Fusion and Christopher Steele. So these are flashpoints as well. And the next major flashpoint that I think is coming, which will bring us pretty close to blowing this thing completely open, is going to be when we confirm what we believe we already know, which is that the dossier was used to launch the investigation and the surveillance on Team Trump, using the assets of the intelligence and law enforcement community, specifically the FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA, the NSA as well. So this is pretty much what TowerGate is all about, is the constant pursuit of the truth in regards to what started as a Trump claiming he was wiretapped, to now learning that we have an actual deep state coup, which now has morphed itself to another chapter, as we've learned over the weekend, based on leaks and statements that are being made by various Democrats, that it appears now that they realize that Mueller is not going to be able to tie Trump to any Trump-Russia collusion, so they're going to try to work through the Congress in the Senate, which eventually will work its way over into the House, where these bills originate, where they will try to impeach Trump for obstruction. They will try to make the case that he fired Comey to cover up, to keep Comey from discovering crimes, or to keep Comey from investigating Michael Flynn. They'll think of something. So the coup never ends. But at the same time, we have the other dynamic, which is that we do have Charles Grassley, Devin Nunes, and others who are pushing very hard to get to the truth. There's lots of good journalists working all these stories, and there's people like myself, YouTubers out there, who are constantly staying on the information and hopefully spreading it to as many people as we can. So this is what's going on. I should also mention that, there's a lot of frustration, and the reason that these things, as I mentioned, Watergate took 2 years and 4 months, and this investigation is now, we're into it about a year and 2 months, a year and 3 months, since we really started getting into this, the investigations behind what happened in 2016, all of it. And you're finding that it's frustrating because things are not happening very quickly. And the reason that things are not happening very quickly is because we have Democrats who are blocking a lot of things, and we have deep staters at the FBI, the Justice Department, who are not they're not providing the witnesses and the documents that are being requested by the Congress. So it is frustrating, but that's exactly how it was during Watergate. It was like pulling teeth. There were times during Watergate there were huge gaps where there would be nothing for months. 2-3 months ago by, nothing would be written about Watergate. Nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden they would stumble onto something with the help of Deep Throat, of course. Remember, Deep Throat in Watergate was Mark Felt, who turned out to be the deputy FBI director. That's the guy who was leading Woodward down the path and telling him to follow the money. So there are not one specific Deep Throat here in TowerGate, but what we have is we're learning that there's more and more people, as I predicted, will start coming forward and giving information, and you're going to see it. And at some point, just like in Watergate, once it's out and once the truth is out and the people who had some involvement know it, what they're going to do is they're going to come out and say what they know, because they want to be able to cleanse themselves. You know, they don't want to be caught up in the criminal prosecutions. They would rather be a witness, you know, to testify to what they knew and what they had observed. And so we saw just last week, we saw 3 different high-level FBI people go to Ron DeSantis and give him some unbelievable information, which I assume will be having more impact in the days and weeks to come, as these guys probably testify in front of a committee hearing. But right now there's a lot of Democrats blocking these witnesses from being able to come and testify, and they're gumming up the works. So, you know, it's a political battle as well. So that's pretty much the introduction to everything that's happening here. Let's go ahead and take a look at what else has been going on. Let's see. Yes. Well, it is Monday, isn't it? And on Monday, of course, we always name the dumbass of the week. Well, this week's dumbass of the week could probably be better described as an asshole of the week. But check this guy out. Eric Strong, S-T-R-O-N-G, Eric Strong. He is a doctor at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Palo Alto, California. Yes, California, one of our favorite places, the socialist stronghold of Palo Alto, California. We have this doctor, Eric Strong, who in the VA hospital, where there's the pictures are supposed to go up of the, you know, chain of command or what have you, where the place is where you're supposed to have the picture of President Trump, this a-hole put a picture of Alec Baldwin doing his impersonation of, you know, with his makeup and his hair and the thing he does on Saturday Night Live. So instead of an actual picture of Trump, he's got a picture of Alec Baldwin's version of Trump up on the wall at the VA hospital. Highly disrespectful, in my opinion. And this kind of follows up to a story we did months and months and months ago about the fact that a lot of people were noticing that a lot of government buildings like post offices and things like that were not putting up their Trump picture. Even if they took down the Obama picture, they weren't putting up any Trump picture. And this was being covered months and months ago. But this guy is an a-hole, because this is the VA hospital. And no president in my lifetime has ever done so much so quickly to try to improve the situation at the VA. And Trump, this was one of the very first things he did, because it was one of the first things he could do. And right away, a campaign promise he kept is he was going to do everything he could to fix the problems at the VA, and I think he has done that and will continue to do that. So, you know, why this guy would do this? Obama didn't do a damn thing for the Veterans Administration. It got much worse under him. Bush didn't do a damn thing, but I bet their pictures were up. This is just disgusting, is what it is. It's just disgusting. The American Spectator, one of my favorite sites, And there's a very good journalist over there who I like to read, Melissa McKenzie. She posted a very good article, and what she does with this article is she asks 7 questions, and they're really good questions. I usually think I ask good questions. These are some really good questions. Some of these are questions I would ask. Some of these are questions I expect Grassley and Nunes committees will ask. But there's a couple on here that I didn't even think of that are really good questions, and I sure hope that someone on Grassley or Nunes' committee reads this article in the American Spectator, because these are some good questions. Let me go through them for you, and they're mostly in regards to the recent revelations about Peter Benstrokinus. So, question number 1, Melissa McKenzie from the American Spectator. Did Peter Benstrokinus receive the dossier from the Rotten Reverend Clinton on July 4th when he interviewed her? See, because we just learned it was Peter Benstrokinus that interviewed the Rotten Reverend. Oh, he didn't put her under oath. He didn't tape it, not video or audio. Terribly, terribly unusual that the FBI would not conduct the interview under oath and would not record audio or video. There is no transcripts of the questions or answers. That way we can never go back and find the Rotten Reverend in a lie. And I'm pretty sure she told a bundle of them. He allowed her attorney, who was also one of the targets of the investigation, to sit right beside her. And that is what we know that Peter Benstrokinus did. But what we don't know is whether or not the Rotten Reverend Clinton gave Peter Benstrokinus a copy of the dossier or the memos, something of the dossier, at that meeting. And do you remember when that meeting was held? July the 4th. On a day when no one will be paying attention because everybody's out shooting off fireworks, drinking beer, going to pool parties, doing whatever they do on July 4th, having a good time. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton and her good friend Peter Benstrokinus could have their little meeting, which probably was more of a chit-chat session. I doubt they asked her a damn thing. And if they did, she lied or took the fifth or played dumb. That's what the Rotten Reverend does. She plays stupid. When it suits her, she's the dumbest person on the planet. She doesn't know that C means classified. She thinks it's numbering a way of arranging the paragraphs. The fact that there was probably no A, B, and D, and F, and G round didn't matter. No, she's too dumb to know. In fact, that was why Comey essentially let her off. She was too stupid to know what she's doing. But when it serves her purpose, she's the smartest person on earth. She might want to wipe. Oh, you mean wipe the server with a cloth? I'm a dumbass. At the same time, she's engineering this complex server system, moving classified email onto other networks, into cloud servers, and everything else, while at the same time playing idiot. Duh. Yes. Yes, that's the Rotten Reverend Clinton's act. So, did Peter Benstrokinus receive a copy of the dossier or memos of the dossier from the Rotten Reverend Clinton on July 4th when he interviewed her? That is a very good question that I never thought of. Never thought of, but when you look at that timeline, somewhere along the line, Peter Benstrokinus crossed paths with somebody with the dossier. Who fed it to him? If the Rotten Reverend Clinton did not provide Peter Benstrokinus with that copy of the dossier or memos of the dossier, who did? Let's see. Do you think it might have been Senator Magoo? That's a good question. Who provided him with the dossier if it wasn't the Rotten Reverend Clinton? You think Christopher Steele flew over from the UK? Do you think Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS crawled off his big fat ass and drove on over to Peter Benstrokinus over at the FBI and passed him a copy? I kind of doubt it. Leaves the rotten Reverend Clinton and John Magoo. Question, did Peter Benstrokinus put together the FISA court material which included the Steele dossier? Well, it appears he did. Nunes and Grassley both have stated, as well as several other people, Jim Jordan, that from what they've learned from their closed-door sessions, it looks an awful lot like to them like Peter Benstrokinus was the one who put together the FISA court material, which included the Steele dossier. That's the question he was asked, that Christopher Wray was asked. That's what they want, that FBI application. They want to see what it said and who wrote it. And if it's Peter Benstrokinus, could be a problem. Did James Comey assign Benstrokinus to the Clinton email case? Did James Comey assign Benstrokinus to the Clinton email case? Somebody must have assigned him to the Clinton email case. And we already learned that they set up a special little arrangement to investigate the rotten Reverend Clinton's emails. A special status was set up with just a handful of people. Do you think that the dishonorable James Comey selected Benstrokinus because of his objectivity? Did James Comey assign Benstrokinus to the Trump surveillance case? Somebody assigned him to the Trump surveillance case. You think it was Sally Yates or Obama himself, or who do you think that might have been? McCabe? Rosenstein? Who was it that assigned Benstrokinus to the Trump surveillance case? Maybe Uncle Bob? That's a question we probably would be able to get the answer to. They almost have to answer that one. Did Comey know Benstrokinus was compromised when he sent him to interview Michael Flynn, which was a setup? Michael Flynn thought the FBI was coming over to talk shop. No, what was going on was that they had already listened to his calls with Kislyak. So they knew exactly what he said and when he said it. And they simply went there acting like they were having a discussion about foreign policy and the Russians, asked Flynn a couple of questions, probably something he didn't recall or got incorrect or what have you. Maybe he just blatantly lied for some reason. But either way, that's how they got him. They set him up. It was a trick. But did Comey know that Benstrokinus was compromised when he sent him to interview Michael Flynn? And he could have been compromised in various ways. Did James Comey know that Benstrokinus was stroking McCabe's legal secretary? Maybe Benstrokinus was stroking himself. Maybe he was stroking James Comey. He might have been stroking everybody the way he's stroking us. Actually, in a different way, but he's still stroking us. That's why we call him Benstrokinus. Did Comey know that Benstrokinus was compromised when he sent him to interview Michael Flynn? That's a very good question. Knowing good and well that the surveillance that was used to interview him was based on the Steele dossier that was probably presented to the FISA court by Benstrokinus. Benstrokinus goes and gets a FISA warrant based on the dossier, which he uses to spy on Flynn, finds out what Flynn said to Kislyak, then goes back and has a setup meeting with Flynn where he asks him questions where Michael Flynn would have to comment where the FBI, Ben Stokeness, already knows the answers, probably setup questions, memory questions, things like that, and then tricks him. Very well done, Mr. Ben Stokeness. Well, hopefully they bring you before Congress and they stroke you for a while until they get to the bottom of this. I would have no doubt in my mind that when Ben Stokeness shows up in front of Nunes and Grassley's committee, if it's an open session, which I'm not sure it will be, that he will most likely plead the fifth or something. I would. If I'm Peter Ben Stokeness, I ain't saying anything, because there is nothing but bad news all around Peter Ben Stokeness and the activities he's been involved in. But as we can see from these questions, we're digging a little deeper here, and we're wanting to find out exactly who was behind Peter Ben Stokeness. He's just a tool. He's just a tool. Was it Mueller or Comey? Lynch or Obama himself? Maybe the rotten Reverend Clinton, using her resources, which are vast, with all that money that she steals and takes from Russian uranium companies and Russian banks, steals from Haiti, steals from everyone, takes donations from anyone and anything. Chinese, Russians, Iranians, it doesn't matter. That's the rotten Reverend Clinton, and she's right at the bottom of all of this. And when we get to this end of this game, that's what we're going to find. The Clintons are all over this. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate news. See ya.